The hip flexors are the only muscles that connect our upper and lower body. And if these muscles were to turn off completely, then you wouldn't be even able to sit upright like this, because these muscles play a key role in our posture, core stability, movement, like walking, running, even sitting. So these muscles can become overworked and they just won't relax when they're supposed to relax. So that can make them also really tight. And then when the hip flexors become tight, then they rotate the pelvis because they pull on the pelvis, create the rotation in the pelvis, and that causes all kinds of imbalances upstream and downstream. And a lot of people suffer from this hip rotation without even knowing it. There is a simple test that you can do with me right now to see if you have rotated hips. So just lay on your back, relax completely, get yourself comfortable, and now start to sit up, supporting yourself with your arms. Look at your feet and see if one of the legs appears shorter than the other. If that's so, then that is a sign of hip rotation as well as tight hip flexors. And here's the thing, if someone has a sedentary job and sits for long hours, then it's not surprising to most people that this person would have tight hip flexors, because these muscles will naturally shorten if we spend too much time with our hips in this position. It would be like keeping our elbow bent for most of the day. Try that and let me know how your biceps and elbow feels, because you wouldn't be able to even extend your arm. Your bicep would be so sore and so tight. And imagine doing that on a daily basis, then soon you would develop pain in your elbow and your shoulder and wrist and hand. So that's why prolonged sitting is known to be a disaster for our hip flexors. But it might be more surprising to hear that some of the strongest and most flexible and mobile athletes, such as gymnasts or dancers, also suffer from tight hip flexors. And it's a very common issue actually, because these people are so flexible. They can pass all of the standard physical therapy tests for the length of their iliopsoas. But just because somebody can do the front splits or show great flexibility and even decent strength in their hip flexors doesn't mean that their hip flexors can't get tight and cause pain. Because what happens with these athletes or athletic people is that their hip flexors get overworked and their nervous system signals their hip flexors to hold on to tension even when they're supposed to relax. So just remember that having a great flexibility and hip flexor strength is not a guarantee of having pain-free and supple hip flexors. Now, does that mean that stretching and strengthening the hip flexors is a complete waste of time? No, of course not. It's an important part of keeping the hip flexors and the rest of the body happy. However, we have to do it, first of all, in the right order. And secondly, we have to use additional techniques and strategies that will really allow us to release the excess of tension in the hip flexors and to optimize them. The first thing to remember is that it doesn't make sense to start strengthening hip flexors that are too tight and shortened, because that would be like trying to strengthen a bicep that is stuck in this position. Muscles that are shortened and tight cannot contract properly, and it would be really hard to strengthen a muscle that can't contract well. So this is why it's important that before we start strengthening our hip flexors, that we retrain them and teach them how to relax first. The second thing to remember is that stretching is a great way to improve the blood circulation in the muscles, which helps to clean out toxins and bring nutrients in. And that's why yoga is so known for its natural detoxing power. However, stretching does actually very little for releasing the involuntary muscle contractions. And these type of contractions, as well as the resting level of tension in our muscles is regulated by our nervous system. We also shouldn't overlook the fact that our hip flexors are located in the core of our body, where we tend to carry stress and store emotional trauma, because that's been also linked to tight hip flexors. Because every time we feel any kind of unpleasant emotion, such as anger or stress or fear, our hip flexors instinctively tighten. And as a result of this repetitive stress or movement or position, basically anything that causes our hip flexors to contract, our nervous system learns to keep these muscles tight even when they're supposed to be relaxing. So while stretching lengthens our muscles by reducing the activity of the stretch reflex, the effect is only short-lived. It's temporary. This is why it feels so good right after we stretch, but we can actually feel our muscles tightening back up within a few hours or even sooner as our stretch reflex kicks back in. So basically, stretching does have its purpose because it makes us overall more flexible and mobile, and it also helps to detox and nourish our muscles, but it can't change the resting level of muscle tension because that's set by our nervous system. The way we can change the resting level of our muscle tension is through neuromuscular re-education techniques. One of these techniques is called pandiculation, which is a somatic type of exercise that involves gently contracting and releasing muscles so that the nervous system gets an accurate feedback about the level of the tension in the muscles. In other words, it helps us to naturally reset the level of the tension in our hip flexors and retrain our posture and movement patterns. So if you want to try this exercise, then go to my video called Somatic Hip Flexor Release, where I guide you through this neuromuscular exercise that will help you to naturally release the tension in your iliopsoas muscles. Now let's talk about the 3-step trigger point release, because that's another effective way to release excess tension in our hip flexors. So the trigger points are basically spots inside of the muscles where the muscle fibers have contracted and they're not releasing. So they're permanently contracted and they typically hurt on compression. And remember that healthy, happy muscles do not hurt on compression. There are many different techniques that can help resolve these trigger points, such as heat and massage and rolling and vibration. But what seems to be the most effective technique for releasing the trigger points is constant pressure, especially if you can combine it with heat. So what you would want to do is to apply heat to that painful area first, and then apply the constant pressure and hold that constant pressure on that spot for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, however long it takes, until the pain melts away. So the way to release your hip flexors and the trigger points is to follow these 3 steps. Step number 1 is to release the front of the hip flexors. And for that, you can use a tool or anything that you can find at home. You can use a kettlebell handle, but I prefer this tool, the Psorite, because it allows me to get deeper into the hip flexors, especially the iliacus that is really hard to reach. That's on the inside of your pelvic bone. So I'm going to show you how I use it. And you can even find different tools from different companies. It doesn't have to be the specific one. There are a few of them that you can find online. But basically, you want to put this part of the tool on the inside of your hip of the pelvic bone. And you want to be somewhere in the middle, not too low where the bone is attached to the pelvis. You want to be a little bit higher than that. So right about there, or right about here. And you just want to, all you want to do is to just kind of melt into that tool, find that painful spot, and then just hold the constant pressure for a couple minutes or until you start to feel that the pain is subsiding, that it's melting away, and wait until it melts away completely. And then just switch sides. And then for the psoas muscle, you want to go a little bit higher and a little bit closer to the belly button. So right about here would be a good spot to place the tool. And you're going to do the same thing. Just hold that constant pressure. And also, if you want, you can move the leg. Moving the leg also moves the muscles in that core and allows you to target those muscles in different ways. So you can bend and extend the leg. But keep that constant pressure on that psoas muscle until the pain goes away. And even though you're feeling pain in there, it's most likely gonna feel like good kind of pain, like your body is saying, oh, finally somebody's paying attention to that muscle, you know? So I never feel like it's a bad pain when I'm putting compression on that painful muscle. It always feels like this is helping. So the second step in this three-step process is to release the back of the hip, because it's not enough that we just release the hip flexors. We have to also release the muscles that are pulling on the hip flexors, which are the abductors and the piriformis muscle in the back of the hip. So you want to find that soft spot. You don't want to be on the hip bone or anything like that. You want to be on that high glute, find that soft spot. And, you know, if you do have tight hip flexors, then this spot is most likely going to be very painful as well. So you just want to find that really painful spot and just stay there, keep that pressure there. And what you can do also is to move that leg, move that knee up and down, extend and bend the leg, but keep that constant pressure on that one spot until, again, the pain melts away. And the last step in this process, the third step, is to realign your hips, because just because you released the muscles, the tension in the muscles around the hips, doesn't mean that your pelvis will suddenly go by itself into neutral position. You have to help it, you have to do it manually. And at the beginning, you're gonna have to do it really, really often, as much as 10 times a day. Luckily, it's not too time consuming, but it needs a lot of repetition at first. And then over time, you know, you're gonna start to feel that you don't have to do it as often. And eventually you're gonna have to do it just once a day, you know, maybe just every other day. And, you know, but it's good to keep doing it, because life will put your pelvis back into the correct position. When you sit too much for long periods of time, or whether you're active and doing some athletic activities, you know, it's just a constant pressure, constant stress on those hip flexors. So that means that you have to keep working on it and realigning it back. So this realigning technique is actually really simple. And like I said, it's not time consuming. So all you have to do is get a stick, could be a broomstick or PVC pipe, and then lay on your back. And all you have to do is to press the stick in the back of your thigh, below your knee, on one side, and then you're gonna press with the other leg into the stick, and that's below your knee on the other side. I'm just gonna move like this so that you can see it, what it looks like, right? And then you're gonna start pressing with both legs equally so that the stick is still parallel and both legs are pressing. And press for a few seconds, like 5 seconds, and then switch. Another 5 seconds, and do this 3 to 5 times on each leg, and that's it. Then your hips are going to go back to neutral position. Actually, one more thing, I forgot one more thing. It's also good to do this. After you do this with the stick, put your fists between your knees and then squeeze your knees together. That helps to also kind of solidify this realignment. So I would recommend that you know, especially if you are suffering from some kind of chronic pain, and it could be anywhere in the body, really. It could be in your neck, it could be in your foot or your ankle. It could be because of tight hip flexors. And I'm not saying that it's every single time it's the cause of it, but you know, it doesn't cost anything just to make sure that you're covering all your bases. And it won't hurt anybody to do this work for their hip flexors, because most of us are sedentary anyways. We all sit during the day, at some point during the day, and for longer than we should. Even I do that. And even if you're active, you're probably doing something to overwork your hip flexors anyways. Most people's hip flexors are tight, overworked, weak in some ways. So I think that every single person would benefit from doing this 3-step hip flexor release, as well as the somatic exercise release. And if you do it for, let's say you do it for 2 weeks straight every single day, you'll probably, most likely, going to feel a difference in how you feel, how your body feels, and probably even in your workout performance. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss on any new fitness and health tips. And that's it for today. I will see you guys next time here on YouTube or in the Z Gym with our training. Ciao.